Okay, next up in food system resilience against food crises is chapter 4, agri-food value chains, building resilient food systems. I've changed the title of the podcast to just building resilient food system value chains. Message is still the same. Again, another brief podcast on this chapter with key messages. Agri-food value chains have transformed in recent years through rapid growth, increased diversity and complexity, and a revolution in logistics, storage, and retail. Right? Global value chain of food. You can get blueberries in the wrong season because they're being moved around from where the season is right for growing them, and you get them very fresh because of these logistic chains. A revolution in logistics, storage, and retail, as we said, but they remain vulnerable to a variety of crises, including disease, conflict, and natural disasters. Their resilience varies with the type of shock, the structure of the chain, and the local context. Value chain impacts can evolve over the course of a crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, agri-food value chain actors first dealt with lockdowns, then with the downturn in demand, and finally with rising prices. So who pays the price, who makes money along these crisis tracks and so on is a complicated story. Civil strife, conflict, and natural disasters disrupt food production and markets, often leading to rising food prices. When food prices rise, poor people always pay the price. Risks to food security and livelihoods can be reduced through flexible market mechanisms to support value chains, as well as appropriate farming techniques and new insurance tools. So risk sharing is always important in this sense. Small informal enterprises and women-owned enterprises are often more vulnerable to crisis impacts, as are producers and enterprises with limited market options. Agri-food actors respond to crises with short-term coping strategies and long-term adaptations. Improving coping strategies and pursuing transformation that facilitates adaptation are central to building resilience. To ensure food value chains contribute to recovery and resilience, it's crucial to tailor crisis response to the type of shock, the particular context and value chain, and when possible, different enterprise sizes. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has perturbed the grain exports from Ukraine because of Russia's fancy footwork around agreements and not sticking to agreements, bombing places that can ship grains and so on and so forth. So that's kind of shock that has to be considered as well. Invest in improved and innovative technologies and tools that build resilience, such as climate-smart agriculture and index-based insurance. Create a regulatory and business environment that fosters the development and widespread adoption of value chain innovations such as e-commerce. Provide opportunities to continue private trading during crises, for example, by avoiding trade restrictions and creating safe corridors. It's exactly this safe corridor which is being manipulated by Russia right now, for example. Ensure that women are able to take advantage of financial and digital innovations and have viable coping strategies. Conduct careful and frequent monitoring before and during crises to target assistance to crucial value chain nodes. There are some nice techniques on network analysis on how perturbations cascade through the system and how the recovery depends on these crucial nodes in the value chain, and this is always very useful to analyze because that can help you build resilience or put the efforts in terms of monitoring and protection at the right nodes to minimize the damage to the whole network and ensure rapid recovery of the network back to operationality. So we are looking here at e-commerce yearly growth rises in 2019, before COVID-19, and 2020, which is post-COVID. So you can see that China e-commerce grew quite a bit from about 10% to 20%. Nigeria went from 20% to 50%. India went from about 25% to 65%, which is a good thing. And some of these have become permanent changes in terms of using e-payment gateways. Of course, it also comes with negative consequences. More shipping because people are ordering from home, and there is more plastic use. So safety concerns, etc., have become complicated. There are other factors. People are driving more than taking public transportation because of worries about pandemics and infectious diseases now, which hopefully will slowly get back to normal in terms of riding public transportation. Mexico had a massive rise in e-commerce from 2019 to 2020, going from just about 18% to 80%, massive change. It's also easier to track transactions and get protection in e-commerce than in cash transactions and so on. Brazil has a similar massive 100% growth compared to 2019. South Africa 100% growth, and Indonesia has gone to 120% compared to pre-COVID-19 in 2019. Okay, lessons learned here. Number of lessons can be drawn from the responses of agri-food value chains to these different crises. I didn't go through all the crises. The chapter lists a number of crises and discussions which you should definitely read up if this is of interest to you. Agri-food value chains have generally proven quite resilient to shocks, though in ways that are heterogeneous and context specific. Often profit motives make these chains naturally resilient because commercial interests find ways to keep the business going, but it's always a question of who pays the price and who benefits from a resilient value chain. Is it the poor people? Are the poor people made more vulnerable when the value chain functions in a perturbed situation, but prices may go up and so on? Improved and new technologies have an important role to play in ensuring greater resilience of value chains. We talked about that in terms of logistic chains. Regulatory and business environment needs to be created or existing environments reformed to allow shock responsive innovations to develop and spread in the face of crisis. Ensuring continued private trading opportunities is important for overcoming crises. So private public enterprise here, procurement by the government, storage of grains, and how it releases to trading partners can all help to manage crises. But again, protecting the vulnerable is always critical. Careful and frequent monitoring, both before and during crises, can support better targeting of interventions to crucial value chain nodes. This is again network. There are many interesting details. India set up a procurement system in the 1960s to deal with famines and general food security issues, and the procurement system is kind of locked in now, and it's not very optimal for the current climate in terms of where grains should be stored, where they should be procured, and how they should be distributed after that, after procurement, during the production season, harvesting season, and out to the next production season. And this is now considered as something that needs to be redesigned, and crop selections in different places have to be changed. So it gets complicated. So crises can help drive these changes, which are not easy in terms of getting farmers to change their crop selections, dependence on cash crops that may be inappropriate, typically sugarcane, cotton, or maybe high water crops like alfalfa in some dry places of the US, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's again leave this chapter by itself with just a 9-minute podcast, and we'll wrap up a couple of more chapters and this report, very nice report from IFPRI on responses to food crisis and how to build resilience. Okay.